Everything's been pretty weird here at Georgia since we're still like we're everything's like normal, but um a lot of classes are hybrid, so you don't have to go into class all the time. You
Right.
just go in through Zoom. Um so campus isn't as crowded as usual, which is nice when you do have to go. But it's just weird and just feels different having to do classes online like this.
Right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for rejoining me. I think you're my first return guest on the podcast or whatever this is, whatever this project is that I'm working on. But just on a more serious level, as a way to kind of get into this, you know, basically what I've been doing is just having conversations with, great swimmers and posting those conversations. And there reached a point last week where to say it felt silly as an insult to these guys have given me their time, have sat down and done these interviews with me, and in some cases poured their hearts out to me or shared emotional stories. And so I never want to disrespect anybody's story, but there reached a point last week where it just seemed inappropriate to be filling the media space with stories about great swimming races that happened 40 years ago. And I just thought I can put these swimming races to the side. These stories aren't going anywhere. There will be a more appropriate time to share some of this stuff than right now. And I just started thinking about, do I just void that space, or, do I think about what I could do? And, at my heart, for those people that know me, I'm a TV producer, and I'm always thinking about, well, what could I do? And to me, the very first person that I thought of was Camden Murphy. Not only is Camden an incredible butterflyer, and in my opinion, the best butterflyer that's ever come through the state of Michigan. But he's also an outspoken voice on some of the topics and issues that are at hand right now. And so the first person I thought of was Cam, and I shot him a text, I think last Thursday or Friday night, and said, "Hey, I thought about you. Would you be willing to have a conversation that was not about swimming?" And you said, "Yes, let's do it." And so I'm really appreciative that you were all in to have this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you actually.
I want to start, with a big picture question before we get into, maybe some bigger topics and issues. And it's just, how are you doing? How are you doing in your headspace and with everything that's going on as a young man right now? How are you?
I'm good. It was definitely hard, probably back in like late June or like mid June and July. It was definitely pretty hard with everything going on. Especially I was here by myself like basically the whole summer too. But yeah, I'm fine now. I think it's better that like I'm starting to get into like a schedule. And so I don't know, I'm not on like Twitter and social media as much as I probably was back in June when I wasn't really doing anything. So yeah, I'm doing a lot better now.
Just as a way to kind of dive into our discussion, because, I asked you kind of how you're doing, and that kind of hints at just kind of the psychological toll that some of this takes. I want to start there with kind of a strong, strong imagery and strong topic. I'm curious to hear from you about the impact that not only the publicizing and the imagery of some of the things that we've seen from men being killed with knees on their back, or men being shot in the back 7 times, and the repeated imagery of that, and the insinuation that this could be you. I believe that that has to have a strong psychological impact. And then in addition, the impact of seeing what I would deem to be kind of opposition to the cause. That when people are trying to stand up and say, this is important, we need to focus on this, seeing an opposition to that and internalizing that that's an opposition to you.
Hmm.
I'm curious if we could start our conversation with kind of the impact and toll that that's had on you. If you could speak to me on kind of the imagery and seeing America as it is.
Yeah. Well, at first, I remember probably like the first week of June, like after like the George Floyd happened and the protests started to happen. Um, that was probably like the only time where I felt like everybody was like kind of like on the same page, like it was a tragedy and all of that. And I feel like most everybody kind of agreed that it was wrong and everything. But then like as the protests like kept going on and stuff, it definitely started to get political, which was a little frustrating because I think people are like missing the bigger picture when they see protests. And like I understand like when people get upset about looting and rioting, because obviously that's not all right to do. But like I think this was like the first time ever where every single state had a protest for George Floyd, or but just for and like in general. And and there was protests all over the world in so many other countries, like in continents like Australia. And so it was, and there's been so many tiny protests in like really small towns. There was a huge protest in Athens a few times. There was so many, like I've seen on like TikTok and so many social medias where there's like 3 or 4 people sitting outside by a curb at like a stoplight, and a bunch of people are honking at them, and it's just the three of them, and then there's a bunch of other people trying to like counter protest. So I think it's definitely frustrating that a lot of people kind of group it all together, as in like when people say Black Lives Matter, a lot of people will counter that with All Lives Matter or like Blue Lives Matter, which first of all doesn't make any sense because there's no such thing as a blue life. Like you can be black and be a cop, so like you can't really say Blue Lives Matter or like, and like obviously All Lives Matter. That's what people have been saying is all lives matter, but Black lives like obviously are under attack right now. It never meant like only Black Lives Matter, but I feel like a lot of people who kind of argue with that either choose to not like understand or like see what the actual meaning is, or just are just pretty ignorant. And I mean, like a lot of these topics that are kind of being thrown out right now and talked a lot about on social media and on the news has been something like that's always been here in America. Like this, like these terms like systemic racism and systematic racism and like oppression, like all of these have been terms that have been like talked about for many, many years. Like I even learned about this in one of my classes my sophomore year. And so when people try to argue, especially on the internet, about, well, this isn't true, this isn't right, this isn't, there's no such thing as systemic racism. Well, it's like they don't really try to like understand or like learn more, because it's a lot of this stuff is kind of like hard to understand. Like it's like reverse racism. Like there's a lot of terms and a lot of things that like a lot of people don't understand and don't know, which is fine because I didn't know a lot of this stuff only a few years ago. So I understand why some people have kind of a harder time coming to terms with a lot of the phrases and what a lot of like these protests mean, because obviously there's also been, undercover cops looting and breaking in stores, and then there's other groups of people, agitators, who come out and riot and loot to make the Black Lives Matter look worse. So it's been kind of like it's been pretty frustrating, but also confusing for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that has to be one of the most frustrating things for really any American, no matter what side they are on, is feeling as though their message is not being reached, because it just seems like everyone is really talking through each other, and that's
Mhm.
certainly on and some of the things that you're talking about, I've particularly found the opposition to the Black Lives Matter movement to be frustrating, not because I'm surprised by the opposition, but how the opposition came about. And a lot of it, revolved around the organization and the formation of the organization, the funding behind the organization. And honestly, I think that when you talk to a lot of people out there, just regular people, and you say, like, when you hear Black Lives Matter, what do you think about? I think they think about the meaning of the three words. They don't think about the organization. And I honestly, as I'm sitting here, and if I was asked, somebody said, "Do you support Black Lives Matter?" I would unabashedly say, "Well, of course I do." And somebody might counter and say, "Well, do you know what that organization is about?" And honestly, I don't know, and I don't care, because it's not what I'm thinking about. And what I'm talking about when I have a conversation about, do Black Lives matter, when I'm saying, do Black Lives matter, I'm talking about my wife, I'm talking about my kids, I'm talking about my family and my friends and my coworkers. I'm not talking about where funding comes from or any of that. And for me, that's an okey doke, like, hey, look over here, let's talk about this and not about this, because you don't want to have that conversation of, have people been treated differently for a really long time? Let's get you to focus over here at this shiny thing. And, like, to me, that is diverted attention from what we should be talking about. And as you talked about a little bit earlier, just kind of like the story being missed and people not really talking about what we should be talking about. I mean, that to me, the how we have construed as a nation the idea of those three words, that's been particularly frustrating for me.
No, yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I luckily haven't been I've like in person, no one's ever kind of said all lives matter to me. So I haven't had like that argument yet. But I mean, like, I could explain it like very like I don't see, the thing is, like, I don't understand how some people will still argue when someone says black lives, like, of course black lives, like, all lives matter, but like right now we're talking about black lives. Like, I don't see how you could like counter argue that or like argue against that, because there really isn't an argument. Like, if you're agreeing and saying all lives do matter, but also trying to explain the term Black Lives Matter doesn't mean just Black lives. I don't see how like so many people it just goes right over the head.
So one of the things that I've been a part of, a number of diversity discussions and new idea discussions, not new ideas, but trying to circulate some old ideas in new circles, in different organizational meetings at work and things like that. And, I've heard a lot of focus from some people that I really trust, trying to shift discussion to, like, what's next? What are people doing? What actions are coming about? And I've been really encouraged to hear people say, like, of course there have been advocates before, of course there have been voices, but maybe never so many. Maybe
Mhm.
never so many people feeling empowered to use their platform to be heard, and those types of things. I just want to ask you, just even backing up months, as you look back at yourself and how your opinions have evolved and how you found your voice in, your college career, and in your as you've evolved with your knowledge and your opinions, and just how have you been empowered in recent years to be heard, and how has that come to action?
Um, well, actually recently, or these past, I think 2 years, I'm on the diversity and inclusion committee, and we recently just did a video with IMG. It was just kind of like a video, like, I don't know what's it called, just like like raising awareness. And so I think also on the men's team, or like the whole swim team, I think we're all trying to do like a video also, and then the football team also did that. So it's definitely really cool seeing a lot of other, like, it branching out to like sports and in the media and just so many different people just talking about it. Um and I mean, like, I don't really know what we're gonna do for the video, but because we already, like, the student athletes did like a huge video. It was basically from every sport. There was a few athletes, and then like the coaches also did one, and then we already did a on Monday we did an online or like a Zoom rally, and a bunch of people spoke, and I think someone from the NCAAP. I don't know where they're from, but someone else spoke, and they were talking about how our school actually, they're still trying to change things because there was this big deal that these there was like 2 or 3 buildings that were built on top of slave graves, and so they're still trying to like figure all that out. And then there was also a Confederate monument that was just removed from Athens, like downtown, like right in front of the arch, like the main place of Athens. So like it definitely is changing a lot of things because I think a lot of people think raising awareness is like signal virtue or like performative, but I honestly, like, I think that anything is better than nothing.
Sure. What types of changes would you like to see on, I guess I'm going to ask you to speak on, on your campus, and I don't want to put you in a bad position to speak out about things that are necessarily wrong at Georgia, but I guess I'm curious about the talking points that you're thinking about and the types of change that you would like to see. Are there things that you're promoting for, or things that, or maybe you would like to use this platform to say like things that you would like to see evolve around you?
Um, yeah, definitely. Well, luckily UGA is probably, I feel like, is the most like diverse SEC school. But yeah, I mean, like the swim team in general, I feel like it could be more diverse. I think there's a few people of color that are coming on the team actually in the next year or so, which is really cool. Um, and then obviously like what I was talking about before, I wish that they can like figure out with the buildings on top of those graves, they can kind of figure that out. And but yeah, I mean, like, just creating more of an inclusive environment for not just sports but like everything. So like there's like different schools like Terry School of Business and like Franklin School of Sciences and stuff. So like I feel like each school maybe can raise awareness for different types of types of way to be like more inclusive, I feel like.
When you speak about the demographics of your team, how many black guys, how many black kids, men, women are part of the program right now?
Right now I'm the only one.
Okay.
And then
So I'm sorry. I almost wanted to follow right up behind that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but one of the things that I've been also kind of hearing about and discussed is wanting to talk a little bit more and amplify. One of my good friends and coworkers suggested a discussion of quote unquote being the only one in the room. And I made a note of that in particular, not just in a professional setting, because I think that many people can relate to that, but also when I knew I was going to speak with you, I knew that there was probably an athletic relationship with that idea. And, I kind of wanted to ask you, just a specific question, not just about being, the only African-American swimmer at Georgia, or diver, I presume, on either the men's or women's side, but also excelling and being an absolute superstar in a predominantly historically white sport. When that's all lumped together, how have you managed that and handled that as you've come along, your journey?
Yeah, so I definitely think that I feel like it helped me being like one of the only, especially back in Michigan, being like one of the only, or not the only, but like one of maybe like three really fast black swimmers. Because I feel like a lot of people knew who I was, and so eyes were always kind of on me, and I felt like I always had a target on my back. And so I feel like that used to kind of motivate me to always stay faster and try to get better, just so because I always knew people knew who I was. Because I mean, a lot of times I would be the only black person at a swim meet, and even when I went out to like sectionals or junior nationals, there'd be like maybe two or three. So I definitely think that being the only, or not like one of the only black swimmer, it definitely helped me because I wouldn't say I experienced a lot of racism um when I was in Michigan for swimming. I don't want to like sound like pretentious, but I feel like probably because I was fast and a lot of people did look up to me. I don't think no one was ever really like rude to me or anything. But I feel like if I wasn't that fast, it'd be a lot different. Like, because I do know a lot of people who have experienced a lot of racism, who are black. But personally, I mean, like I probably have, and it was probably microaggressions. I just don't remember because it was so long ago. But I definitely think it helped motivate me and keep me just mentally focused.
I think you're probably wise to recognize that your experience was probably impacted by your success. You know,
Yeah,
it almost is, you know, like of course everyone was nice to you, you know,
yeah,
you're special. You know, when you talk about the idea that there weren't you know, a ton of people in the pool that were like you, that probably also means that there weren't a ton of people that you could relate to on the pool deck either. And I'm curious, you know, when it comes to mentorship and role models, how you've navigated that, not just in your athletic career, but just in life. Where have you found your mentors and your role models?
um, I would probably my parents are definitely both my mom and my dad were definitely role models to me. They I'd always they'd always help me for like everything when it comes to swimming. My dad's a swim coach, so he understands swimming a lot. And my mom's also she swam a little bit, I think, when she was younger, but she also understands swimming a lot too. And they kind of helped me kind of when I was definitely age group swimming and definitely when I was trying to make my about Georgia and like that it's definitely different down here. And I've noticed that it is a lot different down here, but I feel like they did a good job with helping me become like mentally tough when it comes to that sort of stuff. So I definitely say them.
Well, that kind of naturally brings me to one of the, you know, another topic that I wanted to discuss with you, and that's kind of quote unquote the talk. I've heard a lot of discussion about the talk over, you know, in recent weeks, and to me, a false equivalence by some uh, fellow white people about the talk that they may believe that they have with their kids, and how I believe that it differentiates from the honest one that's being had and is being discussed in black homes, and what we're really talking about. Did you have a talk with your parents, and how did that go?
um I don't think we didn't like sit down one day and talk because obviously a lot of things were different back then. But they definitely told me a lot of things that I wouldn't have learned probably in high school. And they'd make me watch movies a lot of times. They'd take me to the movie theater, make me watch like a historical black movie or something along the lines of that. But it wasn't like one single talk where we had to talk about racism. It's just kind of, they told me that there's some things that I can do, and there's some things that I have to kind of like look out for and not be able to do like a lot of my friends were able to do. Or when I get pulled over, they told me like I can't just like reach over and just grab my wallet and stuff. Like I have to tell the cop that I'm about to reach over it so he knows, so like nothing goes wrong. So I don't know, and I feel like I'm pretty like independent, so I also learn a lot of things on my own. So yeah, I don't we never really had like one long conversation about it, I don't think.
I think the picture that you describe is where there wasn't a talk, there were
Mhm.
talks.
Yeah.
That there the law that lesson was elongated.
It was
Yeah.